Alright, how's it going everybody? Today I feel like ranking all the dungeons, and more specifically, I feel like ranking all the dungeons on their solo flawless. I've done a few solo flawlesses. Well, I mean, I've done all of them. So I thought, who's a better person to rank all of these dungeons than Mr. Fourphase himself? Enough talking, let's get right into the ranking. First up, we have the first ever dungeon in Destiny 2, Shattered Throne. Now I'm ranking these on a scale of Anthony Fantano to I would rather eat handfuls of sand. I feel like it is the best representation for these dungeons. Now, Shattered Throne has 2 bosses. It has 3 encounters. Well, every single dungeon has 3 encounters. Shattered Throne is very easy. The bosses don't have much health, but I still think it's pretty fun. I think this is one that I would put probably in impartial/mid, because it's not like boring to the point of where I would almost rather eat handfuls of sand, or I would rather eat handfuls of sand. I feel pretty impartial about it. You know, I think it's just mid. It's a good dungeon to start out on solo flawlessing if you're just starting to do them. So I would say that's pretty good. All right, next up we have Pit of Heresy. Now, Pit of Heresy only has 1 boss. It's the only dungeon in here that only has 1 boss, and one of 2 dungeons in here that deviates from the 3 encounters, 2 bosses kind of thing that they got going on. I think that it is easy and boring, but at the same time, Zolmek has quite a lot more health than the Shattered Throne bosses. Like, it has a decent amount of health. I think I will give it over Shattered Throne, to be honest with you. I think that that's a good place. It's slightly more exciting, I think, than Shattered Throne. Slightly. Not by much, but slightly. I think that first encounter can drag on a little bit. It's kind of boring. But then, like, you know, the in-between section is interesting and kind of cool. And if you're, like, just starting out solo flawlessing dungeons, then, you know, you're probably scared of the ogres, and I think that's really funny. And also, second encounter is probably, you know, not the easiest thing for people who are just starting out, but this is not a list for people who are just starting out. It is a list for, I guess, overall. So I think impartial/mid is a good place. Also, yeah, like I said before, I think Zolmek is a pretty decent encounter. Next up, we have the one, the only. You know it's going in Anthony Fantano tier because I'm giving it this whole spiel here. Prophecy. It's just, I think, the best dungeon they've ever released. Even though it's moat mechanics, I think that the moat mechanics are actually good. Like, I really do like it in this dungeon. I love first encounter. I think second encounter is really good. It can drag on maybe a tiny bit, but at the same time, like, I don't mind it. I think that the in-between section of first and second encounter is good, and the in-between section of second and third encounter is really good and really cool. And I think that the final encounter is a really good boss encounter, and I think that this dungeon is when dungeons started to feel more like mini raids, less so than, like, you know, longer strikes. It's not a hard solo flawless nowadays. It still has some difficulty to it though if you're, like, just starting out with solo flawlessing and everything. And it's also fun to solo flawless and do solo and just do in general. It's just a fun dungeon. So I think that Anthony Fantano tier is the place to put it. Our first ever Anthony Fantano tier. I fuck with it. Alright, next up we have the second dungeon to deviate from the 3 encounters, 2 bosses thing that they have going on. Realm of Possibility. I like this dungeon, although, of course, I think a lot of people like the fact that it has 3 bosses, but to be honest with you, I do like having at least 1 non-boss encounter in it. Even though a lot of the non-boss encounters in dungeons tend to drag on a lot, like second encounter of Grasp of Avarice, first encounter of Ghosts of the Deep, oh, don't even get me started on that. Second encounter of Duality is, well, less so, but still drags on a little bit. First encounter of Shattered Throne, you know what I mean? I would have liked to see maybe at least 1 non-boss encounter. But overall for the solo flawless and the kind of, at least solo side in general of it, not too bad. That being said though, I don't hate the fact that it is 3 bosses, because I do like boss encounters and I like DPSing and all that. You know, and that almost adds a titch more difficulty to it, that it's held on and been able to retain that. I think that Prophecy is kind of, bled out a little bit over the years. Whereas I think Realm of Possibilities has kind of held on to that. The bosses have a good amount of health, not as much as the annoying amounts of health that the newest dungeons have. I think that the ad density for like when it came out, it was good, and even now it's still pretty good. I like the utilization of the ads as well, where it's not just waves and waves of ads coming at you. They have ads placed in like specific locations to give it less of like waves of ads and like ad clear kind of difficulty regarding the ads, although there is that, but more of a like, you know, be prepared kind of difficulty. I think A tier is a good place to put it. Now we move on to Grasp of Avarice. Now, I think that the bosses in Grasp of Avarice have good health. I don't mind the mechanics. I actually kind of like them. It is really easy because you pick up 10 engrams. I'm going to call them motes because they're basically motes. You pick up 10 motes and you get your super and all your abilities back, which means you can just run in, place down a well, kill all the ads, get 10, get your super back, go over to the other one, pick up 10. After putting down your well, you can put down your well again, pick up 10, you get your well back for DPS, and then you're like, you know, it's kind of nuts. Second encounter is really boring and bad. I think it is the second, I think it's the second worst dungeon encounter in the entire game, and it was the worst dungeon encounter for a while, but we'll get to what the worst is. I think A tier is a good place to put it because it's fun, and I don't think that Pit of Heresy and Shattered Throne are on the same level as it, but it's just that second encounter that really kills the fun factor for me. Next up, we have the one, the only, you know, I'm putting it in Anthony Fantano tier because Duality. Now, this is going to come at a shock for some people. Some people are going to be angry about it. There's going to be one person who's very shocked I'm putting it here. I'm looking at you, Keski. I'm looking at you. You're shocked I put it here because I talk shit about it a lot. But no, I like it. I like it solo flawless. I like it solo. I think Duality has really grown on me over time. I like it. I really like this dungeon. I think that the bosses have possibly the ideal amount of health for bosses in dungeons. The mechanics, while they're not my favorite and they can sometimes bug out a little bit, you know, most of the bugs have been fixed though, so that's good. I think people overreact about this dungeon and like how buggy it is. Like all the bugs have pretty much been fixed for the most part. I mean, like, well, there's some band-aid fixes, like they still haven't fixed the fact you don't get teleported at the end, but I mean, you get your loot though, so at least there's that. But I think it's good. I think it's good, and I think a lot of people kind of use the fact that it was buggy as a scapegoat for them not being good at the game and not being able to solo flawless this or solo it. And I know that that is going to piss some of you people off. And as a matter of fact, I bet that's going to piss a lot of people off. Don't get me wrong. If you were saying it's bad when it first came out, then I would be like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that you would be in your right to blame the fact that it was super buggy on like you losing solo flawless runs. Because that happened to me. That happened to me. I lost a lot of solo flawless runs from the bugs because I did it when it came out. But it is not that buggy now. And if you're gonna blame phalanxes, I would like to remind you, the phalanx bug has been in the game for 10 years. Since Destiny 1, it has been in the game. So if you are still dying to phalanxes, that is on you. That is completely your fault. And that's gonna piss a lot of people off too, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Like the phalanx launch bug, don't run into them. You know, I almost like phalanxes. I almost like the phalanx bug because it forces people to be aware of their surroundings. That's what I like about it. So I think that S tier is a good place to put it. Although I do not like the fact that this dungeon started the trend that Bungie has been going in dungeons of the like only difficulty. Well, some of the only difficulty. Yeah, pretty much the only difficulty. Being one-hit kill mechanics, aka the fucking backpacks. It's not fun. It's not fun, and it's annoying, because you can't, like, you get, well, I mean, they don't one-hit kill you. Maybe I'll even move it down a tier. No, I'm gonna keep it Anthony Fantano tier just to keep people mad, because then they comment and helps the ratings, helps the video do better. I have no idea if that's actually true. Okay, moving on. We have Spire of the Watcher. Here's where we have, I would almost rather eat handfuls of sand. Because I would almost rather eat handfuls of sand than do this dungeon solo. Solo flawless, as a matter of fact. Because it's really easy, and the one-hit kill mechanics in this dungeon are they're not that great, and they don't really kill you often at all. That being the supplicants. The supplicants, while annoying of course, they're just not particularly a big problem because, I mean, you fucking hear them from a mile away. And they're huge targets, so you see them, like, coming at you. The reason I'm putting it in I almost would rather eat handfuls of sand is because it takes a while to get to first encounter, and the bosses have a lot of health, which makes it really boring to do solo because you're sitting there doing like a ton of phases. Now, of course, can you two-phase the bosses? Yeah. But at the same time, are you going to be doing that every single time? No. Most people are going to be like 4-phasing, 5-phasing the boss. And if you're just casually doing the dungeon, like I do a lot of the dungeons just casually, solo, then it's really boring. Like, it's just so boring to do a fucking ton of damage phases and have the super long, like, in-between phases of the encounters. Well, I guess first encounter and second encounter don't really have a super long in-between. You just walk a few meters up. But, like, you get what I mean. I think it's a fun dungeon with more than one person, but this is a solo flawless dungeon tier list, and I've kind of been deviating off that, but my rankings of the dungeons are for solo flawless things. I've just been talking about non-solo flawless stuff as well. Yeah, I would almost rather eat handfuls of sand. But you notice that there's one dungeon left, and one tier left that is empty. Do not be mistaken. I am putting Ghosts of the Deep, and I would rather eat handfuls of sand. Because I would. I would rather eat handfuls of sand than do Ghosts of the Deep solo. And I've done solo flawless Ghosts of the Deep. I've done a solo run as well. I've actually done a lot of solo runs of Ghosts of the Deep during my solo flawless attempts. And why do I have so many attempts at solo flawless of this dungeon? Why did I fail so many times? Because this dungeon is ableist. And you're probably like, oh, get over it. I'm not gonna fucking get over it. I'm not talking out of my ass here. This dungeon is ableist. And hear me out, hear me out. I have what is called ADHD. No idea what the acronym stands for. I take medication for my ADHD so I can focus. Because it's hard for me to focus on one thing. My mind will go off into something else while I'm trying to focus on one thing. And you know what you have to focus on and remember? Because, you know, the whole focus thing, you're forgetful when you have ADHD. At least I am. And do you know what you need to focus on or remember in Ghosts of the Deep? The symbols and the moths. So I would be going to Acolyte or any of the Lucent Hive. And I'm thinking, remember to check the symbol. Remember to check the symbol. Remember to check the symbol. And by the time I get to the Acolyte or the Wizard or the Knight, you want to know what I'm thinking about? I'm not thinking about the symbol. I'm thinking about that new Weekend song is really good. I need to put my laundry in the dryer. What will I have for lunch? And you know what I've forgotten? But I realize as I'm doing a finisher on the ghost, I turn, realizing that I've made a big mistake. Turning as fast as I can, but tragically, the symbol is gone. Vanished. Disappeared. And I'm there left with no fucking clue of what the symbol was, because it was the first one I got. And then too, I just forget that the moths get spawned. So yeah, this dungeon's ableist. And also, I think that just the moths are complete bullshit and they one-shot you. And I think that that is the most lazy and bullshit difficulty ever added to any activity in this game. Because everything else is easy, but the fucking moths suck and make this dungeon severely not fun. And the bosses have a fucking gargantuan amount of health. The first boss has more health than Nezarec. Take into account too that you have to break their like shield every single damage phase. It's bullshit. And I will stand by the fact that it is bullshit. And it makes the dungeon very boring, very not fun, and getting to second encounter from first encounter sucks to do. And while the boss encounters drag on for a long time because of the large health pools, do not fret, as the non-boss encounter also drags on for a long time because you need to dunk 4 of the things, and you cannot speed it up at all, other than you just, like, be fast, I guess. I would rather eat handfuls of sand than do solo Ghosts of the Deep again. 1,000 likes and I'll do solo Ghosts of the Deep again.